When love is tested by doubt, even the strongest hearts can break. CEO Quang's life was saved by a mysterious young woman, but what began as gratitude quickly spiraled into turmoil. From afar, Linda saw them together and mistook his kindness for betrayal. Consumed by heartbreak, she withdrew, leaving Quang desperate for answers. Yet in the silence between them, love and pain collided, until one fateful night, when truth and trust brought them face to face. Will their bond survive misunderstanding? Don't miss this emotional story. Subscribe now and follow the journey of Quang and Linda's love against all odds. Quang's footsteps were still unsteady, the lingering weakness of his recent ordeal reminding him that life had almost been stolen from him. If it had not been for the kindness of a stranger, perhaps he would not be walking beneath the golden light of this late afternoon at all. Gratitude weighed heavily in his chest, mingled with a strange mixture of disbelief and relief. That was why he had agreed to meet the young woman who had risked her safety to help him escape danger. He wanted to thank her properly, not just with words, but with the sincerity of a man who owed his very breath to her courage. They met on a quiet street, not far from a small cafe whose lanterns were just beginning to flicker against the fading sky. The girl wore a simple dress, her hair tied back loosely, her expression shy yet warm. Quang offered her a smile, gentle, not the commanding smile of a CEO in front of a boardroom, but the grateful smile of a man humbled by fate. For once, he felt stripped of his title, his power, his responsibilities. He was simply Quang, alive only because of the compassion of another human being. As they walked side by side, he spoke softly, asking about her life, her family, why she had been at the scene that day. She answered with modesty, never once making herself out to be a hero. "I just couldn't leave someone in danger," she said, her voice calm, almost as if saving a stranger's life had been no different from picking up a fallen book from the ground. Quang was moved. The world he came from, the glittering corporate towers, the ruthless battles for power and wealth, was so far removed from this purity. He felt as though he had stumbled upon something rare, something that reminded him of the humanity he often lost sight of in his endless pursuit of success. It was in that moment of reflection, his eyes lingering with genuine gratitude on her face, that a shadow of fate played its cruel trick. From across the street, hidden behind the glass of a boutique shop, Linda stood frozen. She had come into town searching for him, her heart restless with worry, unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong. And then, as if destiny wanted to test her faith, she saw him. Quang, her Quang, walking calmly beside another woman, leaning slightly toward her, his expression soft, almost tender, Linda's breath caught in her throat. The world seemed to blur around her as she pressed a trembling hand against the glass, her eyes fixed on the pair. Every laugh, every gentle gesture, every spark of warmth that passed between Quang and the girl twisted inside Linda like a blade. She had never seen him look at another woman that way. Or perhaps, she realized with a crushing ache, she had simply never allowed herself to imagine it. Her mind screamed for explanation, for reason, but her heart whispered only betrayal. She remembered the sleepless nights she had spent worrying, the desperate prayers that he was safe, the weight of loneliness that nearly crushed her. And now, in front of her, was the cruel reward for her loyalty, Quang smiling at someone else, as if the bond they shared meant nothing at all. The sound of her own heartbeat roared in her ears. Without waiting to see more, Linda turned away, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. Each step was heavy with the sting of doubt, each breath cut short by the storm of emotions crashing inside her. She did not stop to wonder who the girl was, nor why Quang was with her. All she knew was the image now burned into her mind. The man she loved walking beside another woman, his gaze softer than she had ever seen it, and thus, the seeds of misunderstanding were sown, silent, poisonous, and waiting to bloom into the fiercest trial their love had ever faced. Linda did not sleep that night. The image of Quang walking beside the girl haunted her every time she closed her eyes, replaying like a cruel film she could not stop. The softness of his gaze, the ease of his smile, the way he leaned toward her, it was carved into her memory with merciless clarity. She tried to reason with herself, whispering that there might be an explanation, that she should trust the man who had once held her through storms, who had sworn his heart belonged only to her. But doubt is a parasite. Once it enters, it feeds on every insecurity, every hidden fear, until trust begins to wither. The following morning, Quang called her. His voice, warm and familiar, poured through the speaker like sunlight through a window. "Linda," he said gently, "I wanted to see you. Are you free today?" Her lips trembled, but she could not form an answer. The memory of what she had seen the day before strangled her words. "I'm busy," she finally replied, her tone colder than she intended. She hung up before he could say more. For days afterward, this pattern repeated. Quang reached out, again and again, his messages filled with concern and affection, but Linda either ignored them or responded with curt replies. Each time she did, she felt as though she was cutting her own heart, yet she could not bring herself to face him. She was terrified that if she looked into his eyes, she would see confirmation of her worst fear, that he had already given the tenderness that once belonged to her to another woman. Quang, meanwhile, was bewildered. He had sensed Linda's worry before, but never this silence, never this distance. Each unanswered call left him restless, pacing in his office when he should have been focused on board meetings, staring at his phone long after midnight as though it might somehow reveal the truth. Had he done something wrong? Had she grown tired of him? The thought gnawed at him, a sharp anxiety he could not shake. At the company, his colleagues noticed his distraction. The man who once commanded rooms with quiet authority now appeared lost in thought, his gaze often drifting toward nothing. He found no rest in the victories of his business, no joy in the applause of success. Without Linda's laughter, without her presence by his side, everything seemed hollow. Linda, on the other hand, buried herself in her work to escape her thoughts. Yet no matter how many reports she reviewed, how many late nights she spent at her desk, her heart refused to quiet. She remembered the way Quang used to bring her tea when she was tired, the way he listened to her dreams as though they were his own. And then she remembered him standing beside the girl. His expression filled with warmth, and the ache returned, sharper than before. At night, Linda would sometimes sit by her window, staring out at the city lights, wondering if Quang was doing the same. A part of her longed to run to him, to demand the truth, to hold him tightly and erase the growing distance. But pride and fear chained her in place. What if she asked and his answer shattered her? What if the love she thought unbreakable had already slipped away? The misunderstanding grew heavier with each passing day, thickening the silence between them. It was a silence filled not with peace, but with unsaid words, with pain neither of them knew how to release. And though Quang searched desperately for answers, and Linda hid behind her wounded pride, fate was quietly preparing the moment when their fragile hearts would collide, either to shatter completely, or to be bound even closer than before. The evening air was cool, carrying with it the scent of rain that had fallen earlier in the day. Quang stood outside Linda's house, his figure tall yet heavy with weariness, his heart pounding with an unfamiliar urgency. He had waited long enough. Days had stretched into a tormenting silence, her distance growing like a wall he could no longer bear. Tonight, he would not leave until she opened the door. Tonight, he needed answers, not from suspicion, but from a love too deep to surrender quietly. He rang the bell, once, twice, and then again. For a moment, he thought she would not come, that she would leave him standing there until the night swallowed his resolve. But then, the door creaked open. And there she was, Linda, her eyes swollen with sleeplessness, her posture defensive, as though bracing herself for a storm. Linda. His voice was soft, pleading, stripped of its usual calm authority. Why are you avoiding me? Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. Instead, tears welled in her eyes, betraying the storm she had been carrying alone. Finally, the dam broke. Because I saw you, Quang. I saw you with her. You looked at her like I don't matter anymore. Her voice cracked, raw with the pain of sleepless nights and unspoken doubts. While I was here, sick with worry, you were smiling with another woman. Do you know how that feels? Quang's heart clenched at her words. For a second, he could hardly breathe, stunned not by her accusation but by the depth of her hurt. Slowly, he stepped closer, though she instinctively backed away. He stopped, keeping the distance she needed, but his gaze never wavered. Linda, he began, steady but gentle, the woman you saw, she is not who you think she is. She saved my life. I met her only to thank her, because without her, I wouldn't be standing here right now. That's all. Nothing more. His voice deepened, filled with urgency. Look at me. Please, look at me. My heart hasn't changed. It has always been yours, and it always will be. Linda shook her head, torn between believing and doubting, between hope and fear. But your eyes. The way you smiled at her. Quang stepped forward again, this time closing the space between them, his hand lifting but pausing in midair, waiting for her permission. My eyes were filled with gratitude, nothing else. Don't mistake thankfulness for love, Linda. If you saw tenderness, it's because I was humbled that even a stranger could risk so much for me. But love? He pressed his hand gently over his chest. Love lives here. And it belongs only to you. The sincerity in his voice struck her like a bell ringing in the quiet. For the first time since that day, she dared to meet his gaze. There was no shadow of deceit, no flicker of betrayal, only raw honesty, only the depth of a man who had nearly lost everything and knew what he could never live without. I was so scared, she whispered against his chest, her voice breaking. I thought I'd lost you. You will never lose me, he murmured, pressing his lips to her hair. Not to fate, not to fear, not to anyone. You are my home, Linda. The only one. And in that quiet night, under the faint glow of the street lamp, the misunderstanding dissolved like mist under the sun. What had threatened to break them apart instead bound them more tightly together, their love tested, scarred, but stronger than before.